Right, here we are, eccoci. So let's switch on the camera. Galit, welcome. So we are now proceeding with Galit Ariel, which is already with us. And the title of Galit's lecture is Possessed. New Body Spaces and Immersive Realms. And Galit is a techno-futurist and a thought leader within the field of immersive tech. And you define yourself as a techtivist, since you are passionate about future in which technologies are integrated into everyday life, but not to control it, not as a mean of control. Her goal is to bridge the gap between pixels, atoms, and neurons to create tools and platforms that help people experience these worlds in new and better ways. Galit authored numerous thought pieces, articles, and papers, and her book Augmenting Alice, The Future of Identity, Experience and Reality, explores the way augmented reality's diffusion will shift cultural and functional paradigms and redefine core concepts related to culture, space, experience, and ethics. And Galit currently lives in Toronto and is working on art tech speculative project as well as on her next book. Which I don't have the title here. Maybe it has not a title yet, got it? But
it has a title. It just doesn't have a release date.
All right.
But it's coming. It's coming.
Okay.
Hopefully mid 23.
Mid 23. All right. So you are in the middle of the process. Then through her innovation lab, Future Memory Incorporated, helping organizations, policymakers, and commercial clients to shape their tech futures by exploring immersive narratives, interaction tools, and experiences. So let's give the floor to Galit Ariel. And please, Galit, thank you very much for having accepted our invitation. And the floor is yours.
Thank you for inviting me, and great to be here. So let me start sharing. So yeah, my name is Galit Ariel, and I am a space nerd, in the sense that I love science fiction, but that's just part of the bigger scheme of things. What I really look at is how do we experience spaces, digital, physical, mental, how do we show up in them, and how does that shape our human experience. So yeah, I'm a space nerd, so I see body as a space. Not just me, but body is a space on its own. But what's interesting about our body is that it is both a space that we experience from the inside out, and people experience us from the outside in. But our body itself is the entire interface of the human experience. This is how we understand the world. This is how we internalize external knowledge, and this is how we locate ourselves in it. Right? Our body, whether you like your body or not, our body is not a temple. It's a spaceship, and we navigate with it through the world, through life, through time and space. But what makes a body, at least, from I want to say a postmodern perspective, and this is the contemporary Western definition of a body. A body is the organized physical substance of an animal or plant, either living or dead. And I want to highlight these, almost everything here. First of all, the idea that the body is an organized physical space or substance, that it's a substance, it needs to be, tactile or physical, that it requires some sort of definition of being an animal or a plant, like a defined, I want to say, being or creature, and either living or dead, right? And when we step into the idea of digital presence and digital embodiment, all these things kind of scramble and put in question everything we think about when we say a body or something. But we'll get into it in a second. I want to start in the beginning. And the beginning is obviously, myths of body creations. And from indigenous to modern and scientific spaces, we always need to explain to ourselves, where does the body come from? How is it created? So whether or not you follow the evolution, the physical evolution, or you have some sort of any link into cultural societies or cultured society, there's always an explanation of how the body was created. And what is very interesting is how we evolved in the idea of who create the body from a divine being, which can be natural or I want to say a deity, like a god or part of nature, into the idea that we are the ones creating our own bodies, right? We are the ones that are in control of it. We are the ones that can define what it will look like and what it will constitute through genetic manipulation, through other scientific means. And we really moved away from the idea of the body as, I want to say, belonging to us as something temporary or finite, into the idea of bodies as prolonged and even eternal existence. So the idea that we are not just a flake in space or time, we can create alternate bodies and projections of our bodies is a very interesting one in terms of how do we see our relationship with our body. And that's also not that surprising because, as technology, and when I say technology, I mean anything that is produced synthetically, right? Not just computers, but even the representation language is technology. Body representations through sculptures and image art technologies of mediating our bodies. And what we can see here in a very, very rough timeline is how...
Sorry to interrupt you, Galit. The slides, we are still watching the first slide.
Really?
Yes, exactly.
So I won't repeat it, but just so you know what you've missed. Look. So I think we were just here and we were talking about having our bodies, I want to say, represented in better ways, or more precise way, or more that became unprecise, hyper realistic ways. But that actually kind of talks of the role of technology as both a window and a mirror. It's both a window that allows us to look through it into other spaces, but it's also a mirror that mirrors the way we represent things and consume knowledge, obviously. And our knowledge about how the body is now reflected through millions of mirrors, every screen of anyone we know that can look at our body. And we are looking at them, looking at us, and we are looking at ourselves, looking at ourselves. So the way we mediate our bodies changed dramatically through technology, and changed ideas of body norms, going from, from something that is more abstract, like the image of the left, Venus of Willendorf, from the polyethic Paleolithic area, which represented generosity and prosperity, into the sculptured bodies that came about, ideas of perfected bodies and optimized bodies, into ideas of manipulated bodies and obviously Photoshop bodies. if I hope it's photoshopped bodies, but also the idea of not just photoshopped or amplified for beauty, but the idea that our bodies, not just through the screen, but now through immersive spaces, can be altered and become, I want to say, unbound to our actual or to our physical embodiment is also very interesting. And here is something that is a little bit, I want to say, more difficult to me as a person, or as a theorist. The idea that we do think that our bodies are not just spaces that could be controlled, but that they should be controlled, that they should be optimized, that in some way or another, are a machine, right? And it goes from the wonderful Vitruvian Man of Leonardo da Vinci, which is the first time that the human body was described or depicted as an equation. What this very famous image here on the left is an equation, a mathematical equation, the idea that we can analyze the body. And this came with the emergence, of course, of scientific and medical explorations of the body, to the idea of trying to interpret the body as a system. So this is the first step of detaching from the ecosystem of everything, of divinity, let's say, of nature, into the idea that it's an autonomous controlled system. And this became so powerful in our culture that if you look to the badge on the right, this is actually the NASA badge given to astronaut that did spacewalking. This idea of, I think it's quite amazing, this idea of being able to indeed conquer the space of the body, the outer space, to position ourselves above nature is very, very important in how we are starting to depict ourselves right now through digital and immersive technologies. Because the biggest thing that we are doing is really indeed overcoming nature. We are breaching the boundaries of nature, of the finite. We enhance our corporality, not corporality, corporal reality, right? The tension between the idea that our shape, our imprint in the world will end. We have prolonged it medically, and now we are, prolonging it indefinitely, and we have unprecedented control on how we want to show ourselves and be seen. The problem with that as well is that this idea of kind of like ideal selves, ideal bodies, or perfected bodies also fueled a lot of very deviant political and not just political from a regime, but social political spaces of what is my body and what is the other's body. What is the ideal body? What is the desired body? Which bodies are worth what? And which bodies are less worthy, right? And we have some really terrible examples here of how these ideas of body perfection and alteration and control have been utilized to inflict hierarchies of domination of other bodies. So from the image on the left of the idea of women being hysterical, the female body being flawed, and this is like an examination of a female mental patient in front of doctors and etc., where the female body was on display, like, look at this hysterical woman, she is sick, into very, I want to say, more violent and invasive acts against othered bodies, right? So the Tuskegee syphilis study in the States, if you haven't heard about it, do read about it. A terrible human experiment, in the lack of other words, that happened in the USA between the 1932 and 1972. So up until not so long ago, and it was conducted by the city CDC, the official federal body of control, disease control in the United States, where African Americans were deliberately misinformed about a medical experiment they've been in, and basically they were monitoring people that had syphilis, so already Black, already I want to say disabled or diseased bodies, and they didn't inform them that they're actually tracking syphilis, so they knowingly let them go ahead with the disease to see how it develops, and 28 patients died directly from syphilis, 100 died from syphilis-related complications, and 40 of the wives were infected, and 19 children were born with it, and into the horrible, Nazi human experiments on twins, and in specific genetic modification. And a lot of what we know about genetics today is based on these genetic experiments. But this is too depressing. But it does happen, and this is something we need to know when we start talking about experimenting with new bodies and having bodies in new spaces, especially digital spaces, because we tend to separate the idea of I want to say, our physical space from the digital space. And even though the digital spaces or third spaces, elsewheres, are considered elsewhere, wrongfully so. And I've heard it over the years. Now it's diminishing of like, well, there's the real me, the real body me, and the mental me, and then there's like digital space. That's not real. So no, it's not tangible, but it is real to ourselves. As I said, we see the world from inside out, and if the only way to see ourselves truly or objectively, I want to say, not subjectively, is through external lenses, through mirrors, through the reaction to the world, to us. Digital space, like I said, a million mirrors pointed out at us, had changed profoundly the way we see ourselves and conceive ourselves, the way we engage with the world, the way that we think we should show up in the world. And it created a lot of new mirrors, and specifically social media, even though it's not just that. But we all know that we have our physical self and we have our digital self. Today, it's more blended, but we are still acting differently online and offline. Things we would say, as socially polite that you might be in person, you're a different person online, but you're the same, right? So, social media really changed the way we interact with others, the way we even interact in the real world, especially due to the fact that everyone has a mobile phone. We really think about how we act and interact in the world because we might be captured at any given time, which is good and bad as well, because we are always observed. And we also learn to quantify ourselves. We have devices and machines that recognize our faces and engage us thanks to our appearance, thanks to our biometric or somatic data. And we actually inflict it on ourselves as well. We have all these wonderful devices that track our heartbeat at any given time. We are now becoming trackable beings. Our bodies have trackable systems in it. And also, of course, we now have, this is a quick demo from the MetaHuman platform of Unreal Engine. These are, virtual beings, virtual selves, and they look as real ones, and they're completely computer generated. So when we encounter one of these beings, what happens? How real are they? And right now, we have mainly commercial beings like KFC's Colonel Sanders, which is pretty hot from what I remember when I ate chicken last. And yeah, it's not a new one, but I think it's quite interesting how they reposition themselves through this silver fox kind of hot avatar, and this idea that this being has a life. It's also not so new. We have these digital influencers that have a certain physique. Obviously, he's very pensive. He's really thinking about life in the gym, and he has relationships. And it's true, digital avatars have relationships not just with other avatars, but proclaimly also with human beings. So we are moving into this really interesting space of relationships with other bodies that are virtual, or some completely unreal, completely fabricated being, and some attached to actual people that just choose a virtual appearance. And our bodies are becoming part of that space, right? Especially now that we have motion tracking, augmented reality, virtual reality. Our bodies are not just the fingertips at the end of a keyboard. Our bodies are the interface for these virtual experiences. This is an augmented reality game developed with Magic Leap and Weta workshops in New Zealand. And again, like you can, cosplay in real life. So now we are in this really new world, this World Wide Web, where the whole world is wired. The whole world has let's say, a digital, potentially a digital layer placed into it, augmented reality, or the ability to step into virtual reality fully. So if up until now we were mediated by this screen, by this black mirror, now the real world is where our physical body and digital bodies kind of like flow in between these spaces and maybe make the definition between them obsolete, because who can tell the difference anymore? And that's that's fascinating, because that means that our interface, this like one thing that we knew we had and didn't change, is now becoming fluid by itself. So we have the possibility of to be emerged or resurfaced from gendered nation or destination of our nature. Like, this is what I was born with. Unfortunately, not my body is definitely not a temple. This is the gender I was born into, and without I want to say gendered technologies, really step into a space in I want to say physically non-invasive space that we can be a male, a female, a creature, where our biology is not a destiny. It becomes a playground of willed and fluid identities. And as a nerd, as you can see, I've been digitally cosplaying for years, right? When you play a video game, you have an avatar that represents you. A lot of us actually do use very similar, not just aspirational, but similar physique to our actual, I want to say, biological body. Most times we'll stick with our gender, and we'll have like an amplified version of ourselves, but not necessarily completely different. This is an avatar I made in the right, where I really tried to make this non-racial, non-gendered body self. And it was really a weird experience, because this is when you start thinking to yourself, so when you create these avatars, these digital representations, what is your conception of yourself, of a gender? You still look to see yourself in it, right, in some way, unless you really, really, really want to be someone else. But even within that, it is your aspirational belief of who you want to become. And at a certain point in 2017, I want to say, or 18, I was really curious about this idea of identity swap, and unfortunately for me, I could reduce myself into like three elements: the glasses that I normally wear, which are not these but others, a hat, and my striped eyebrows. And I made like this little lens where people could become me, and we did selfies together, and it was really, really fun. And the point of it was actually to talk about this idea of having your identity swapped with someone else, right? We had the swap faces in AR. What happens now when people want to assume our physical identity because we don't own our appearance per se? The attack of the body snatchers is imminent. What happens if your ex wants to pose in the world like you, want their new girlfriend or boyfriend look like you? What happens if people just like the way you look, not just your shirt? They still steal your look. What does it all mean? I don't mind personally. I think if you want to be me, good luck to you. But it's part of the investigation I'm doing. What does it mean to be in the world, and what does it mean, indeed, with these deep fakes, with these things that we don't know if we should believe or not? We cannot trust our eyes anymore. The first interface, we can't trust anymore what we see and who we see. For now on the screen, but in the very near future, all around us. And since most of our communication with the world today is unfortunately through screens, especially post-global and post-pandemic, what does it mean, to be as a digital entity, or to experience ourselves and let others experience us within digital spaces? What is real and what is fake? Does it even matter anymore? And another friction that comes out of it is the idea that our bodies, now our physical bodies, not just when we log in, our physical bodies in space are exposed all the time. So we're moving from, a mobile phone that is capturing us into wearable devices. On the left, we have a Chinese police officer that using AR capabilities to monitor people in physical spaces, and everybody were horrified about it. The social credit system that was generated by the government there that could monitor people that were jaywalking in the street and basically find them in real time. But on the right, we have the Facebook / now Meta Ray-Ban AR headset. It looks exactly like a normal pair of sunglasses, and we don't know anymore. We cannot tell who is watching us or when. We are constantly exposed, not just to cameras, but to other people's gaze that are, I want to say, knowingly or unknowingly monitoring us digitally. And another question is what does it mean to the body economy? What is my body worth? We spoke earlier about the idea of copyrights. If I don't own my body, the copyrights of my appearance, what do I own? What is my body worth? What is Kim Kardashian's body's worth? Can people use my body to have commercials on it without me knowing? Can I sell my appearance to other people, especially with NFTs and crypto kitties? This is a real question. It's not even hypothetical. Right? You think it is, but wait 6 months. The way things are moving, this is going to be a very serious issue. Hopefully not. And also, what does it mean to not just to be captured in space, but what does it mean to be erased from space? Because back in 2012, Steve Mann already with his headset that was ripped off by Google, his Google Glass, but he created a headset, the iTap, that was already able to delete certain content or blur it. So he was going into like blurring commercial input. So you can say like, hey, great, I can now do an ad block in reality. But it also means that you can be deleted from reality. And who decides who gets deleted? So I always say like, yep, my ex-boyfriend's out with them all. But what if you're a minority and you get deleted from the physical space? Deleted, not maybe physically, but you are not seen. And if you're not seen, you don't exist to certain people. And I did a little experiment where I used machine learning to delete minorities, which was men, because in Canada and in other parts of the world, men are less than 50% of the population. So how would men feel if they are blurred away or deleted from space, right? And what we're also doing, and we spoke about it briefly earlier, is creating these new intimacies with real and fictional character. This is the wedding of Mr. Kondo and Hatsune Miku, which is a virtual character. They actually married, and it's not an uncommon practice. She's actually married to several people, but he had a relationship with her. He married this avatar. He married this virtual fictional character, and they unfortunately had to cut short their marriage because she didn't have technical support anymore. And one day he came home and she wasn't supported anymore. And he hopes to meet her again in the metaverse. Again, very fascinating. What does it mean to have an intimacy with a non-living digital being? You know, and not to mock him at all. But again, we're talking about this very interesting concept of having intimacies with, I don't want to say non-existing, but with virtual beings, and not just beings that we invented, but beings that perhaps lived and no longer live. This is the gift that Kanye West gave his wife, Kim Kardashian, a holographic birthday message from her deceased father. You might want to watch it for a second because I find it awesomely weird.
You married the most genius man in the whole world, Kanye West. You are the most amazing mother to your 4 beautiful children, and they are perfect.
Okay, so maybe Kanye West is the most genius person, and Kim is the most wonderful mother. But this is starting to tweak with the way, if we talk about archiving and having a heritage, when now we have, I want to say, these digital zombies that keep living, you know, around us, or we perceive them as interacting with us. Their histories don't end. How do we archive things that don't end? How do we archive things that don't die? What happens to our body after we die? Who owns it? Do we have rights on it after he died? I don't think Robert Kardashian knew he was going to be used. His body will be used like that. Would he consent? Do we need consent? And you might think that all this wonderful new digital spaces, you know, you might say, well, that was, you know, our physical body is the past, and now we're in this limitless space of opportunities. So it might be true, but it's also strangely creating these reverse taboos about our bodies. The image on the left is actually a cave drawing that was, wait, I need to know dates, and I shouldn't. Never mind. So that's a cave drawing, I think from Australia, from Northern Australia, of 2 women having their period. Really, they made a cave drawing out of it, and they showed it. Look, women has things coming out of them once a month. That was, you know, today, if you would show it, you can't even show it on commercials, right? The blood becomes blue liquid, kind of pretty, it never really spills. On the right, you have the avatar of Travis that performed, the virtual avatar performed on Fortnite. And if you look closely, you notice something is missing. And what's missing is his nipple. This avatar had no nipple because nipple today, just the male nipple, female nipple, is profanity. So it was taken out. And in the hallways of the nerds, you know, there was this like Nipplegate thing in the background, and I was sitting there watching how people are like, the avatar should have a nipple. No, it doesn't matter. You know, this idea of, you know, again, how do we represent our bodies in virtual spaces? What do we edit out and what do we keep? is also a very interesting reflection of ourselves as a society. I personally think it's a little bit ridiculous. So actually, what I did during COVID was create nipple head, talking head filters that were banned, and I did it very inclusively. It was like non-gendered, all body colors, different shapes. It was banned within 37 minutes from Snapchat, now Snap, and I thought it was bizarre. So I made another one where you just pushed away pixelated nipples from your mouth. That was banned 3 months later. So I didn't give up, and I made a whole animation short about what happens to censored nipples. Where do they go when they get erased from digital spaces? And I made a short animation. It won some awards. So I like to poke. I like to play with these ideas of what are body spaces and how do we end up being, I want to say, more conservative in all these wonderful non-conservative and limitless spaces. Ultimately, what does limit us is ourselves, because again, we have our bodies as the only interface, and we are bound to it. Whether or not we can completely alter our being into non-embodied or other-bodied being, I think it's more of a long-term issue, more of a long-term change. It won't necessarily happen within our generation, not to us as adults. But it is a very interesting question of how are we changing the body as a space? How do we change the body from somewhere that is here to somewhere that is elsewhere, and to something that is here and elsewhere, and me and the other at the same time? And I have more questions than answers because I'm looking into it myself, but I would love to hear your questions and what do you think about the body as a space of transformation, the body being here, the body being there, the body being you, and the body being othered. And that was it. Oh my God, I didn't go over time. This is amazing. Never happens.
Never happened. Thank you.
Never happened in my life.
Right. No, thank you very much, Galit, because really, I mean, there are so many things and so many issues here that we can speak about these issues, I think, for days and days. I hope that here there is someone interested in placing a question to Galit, or I look at my room in front of me, but also Echo. Your slides are the best I've ever seen. This is for you, Galit, on the chat. I'm not sure that you can see the chat.
But so, what do you talk about? Is the best the body? Is it the best?
So Simona tells you that thinks that your slides are the best she's ever seen. Simona, to speak with Galit, just open your. You cannot open your microphone. Maybe wait. I just. What do I say, Simona? Wait. Participant. Sorry, I just allow Simona to.
Oh, she's in a noisy environment. I'll take that compliment. Thank you.
No, I think
that's about the content.
Exactly.
Oh, it's about the presentation by the slides. Actually, do it, because we judge things by appearance. The body is an interface. Our eyes, our eyes are actually part of the brain. They're not an organ. They're part of the nervous system of our brain. So that's fine. You can objectify me. That means you're thinking of me. Thank you. No, I was just fishing for compliments.
No, I think that really there were so many issues here at stake, and I think that this is what more or less we are also reflecting on in these days, from various approaches. So I think that it's really a precious contribution here for not only for these days that we spend together, but as a have this broad approach that also includes not only our personal experience but more broadly a social transition, which is in this moment really happening also at a very fast pace. This is also, so it's important to keep the concentration of what is happening, because it goes very fast. So
it's like the title of this wonderful movie. I don't know if you got to see it. Everything Together All at Once. I feel like we're living it everything together all at once right now, and not just digitally or technologically. It is because I want to say the tentacles we have are hyper connected. So we're getting input. Everyone I know is depressed right now, honestly. Not depressed in the sense like depressed, but have an existential slight depression because we are observing so much information that we don't have time to process, right? So we don't have time to locate ourselves in the world. We don't have time to even think about how our bodies, our emotions, our minds are responding to the world. And this is something that really, I want to say, concerns me. Again, I'm an immersive space fanatic. Like I can't believe I'm living in this timeline. This is so amazing. Timeline, yes, I don't know about the current simulation. It's not going so well, but we are living in these amazing times where, our capacities are limitless, like literally limitless. There is no more, I don't know what science fiction writers are doing now. I mean, they're probably becoming unemployed, not just because a machine learning device is writing the stories, but how can you even fiction, our future when we live in this science fact, when we engineer bodies, where we clone bodies, where we have cognizant machines, where, I think this is a really weird space that we were predicting, but we never really, really thought that it will come, and definitely not all together all at once. So there's a lot of friction happening, and I hope we can resolve it quickly. I think we have a lot to think about because this friction is trickling, and again, I'm talking from a techno-social space, which is everything around us. I think for people living in the technological society, definitely it is the case. If you live in the outback, you're probably just living, right? If you have no reception, you're probably just living your life, which is complicated enough. Add technology to it on every level, you add layers of complications. And again, complications aren't bad. I like complicated things. But I think we're finding it difficult as a society and individuals to locate ourselves within all that.
But I agree, guys. I also think that it's crucial to reflect on these processes, because also, as we all know, there is enormous commercial pressures on us as well. So it's important to have an independent reflection, to have an independent voice, and to try to decipher. I don't know if this decipher what's from our point of view, which means arts institution, arts academy, and people who are now entering this world. So it's important because, of course, the commercial pressure is not the evil, but you have to be aware of the strength.
I can argue that some are, even the ones that say they won't be evil. I think some are evil, not evil because they want to destroy us. No, they need to keep us alive, for sure. They need us. But I think, again, it's we're living in difficult times because we externalized how we know ourselves almost completely. We outsourced it, right? We outsourced, how we feel in our bodies. We outsource, there's speaking about the female period, there are apps that now help women predict their cycles. Let's go to a politically loaded space, because I love politically loaded spaces. So we have these wonderful apps that help women track their periods, somewhat, for procreation. They want to get pregnant. Some to avoid it. Really interesting idea of control of the body, but also, again, mediating your knowledge of your body, what's happening in your body externally. You now have an external calendar that tells you, we now program our off time and on time digitally to match our physical and vice versa, our physical to match our digital presence. But what happened with these apps, I don't know if you know it, with the Wade versus Roe in the United States, some of these apps started being tracked. Some location apps started being tracked by government, like, not federal government, but local government bodies. So now our bodies are being tracked, not just by us, and not just by these commercial entities, but by political entities. And commercial entities are political entities these days, especially in tech. Tech is not this little industry of nerds sitting in Silicon Valley. It is now an infrastructure that every government, every individual, every body is dependent on. So this is highly political. All these ideas of how do I show up? I'm not on TikTok personally because specifically out of all the wonderful, entertaining platform, but it is a Chinese government platform that is, using your I want to say it's not even hiding that it's taking your data. I'm starting to reconsider how do I release my digital data, because now with Dolly and all this AI stuff, I'm like, I don't want to be a data source, not just my body that is already a data source, but now my work, my output is becoming just like, and it's not, we can't track it. This is really, really hard to be in this world and not be part of it in some way, actively or passively. And I think it's really hard times to say no.
Right. No, because it's also sometimes if you would like to draw a line, you are not, you don't know how to draw it. No, you cannot. This is also, I think, another thing to consider. No, it goes very quickly beyond your control. So it's.
So we give up altogether, right? We gave up. We really gave up on. We gave up control when I talk to people, and I'm definitely not somebody that will tell anyone go offline forever. I don't think it's possible, but I think it is possible to actively make some decisions. Like the bans on Facebook have been very effective because, again, our bodies engaging with these platforms are the most valuable asset that Facebook has and Google has, and all these, things. They need our bodies to interact, right? Eventually, even Dolly and Midjourney, they need us to interact with it. There's this digital entity making digital, content that was drawn from humans, but that's another issue. But they need us to see it and value it to have value, right? So we're still quite important. Our bodies in space are very important to all these entities, and knowing what it means to be in the space physically and mentally is very important, very crucial. It's probably the only agency we still have these days. Maybe.
No, it's true. I think it's and also all right. I don't want to just have I hope that there will be people asking you something, Galit, and also we will in a way continue this issue tomorrow with other speakers. We have Vittorio Gallese, which he's one of the has discovered with Giacomo Rissolati the mirror neurons, which will also have let's say the body as a central issue of how we experience and we know and we have a relation with also the world through our bodies. So this is themes that are recurrent in these days. So Galit, thank you very much for the lecture. It was really, I think, a pleasure having you with us, and you gave us really very precious insights. And I hope that there will be many future occasions to meet you and to have
Now I get invited. Ha.
Of course, you
I think
are.
I have to. Oh, and I just want to, I'm just sharing, nipped the short in the
Right.
chat.
Yeah,
It's
thank
funny.
you. Right.
It was my first animation ever, and it's like, if you want to ever see an animation about one nipple, this is it.
No, thank you very much. And of course, you are always invited. You're in the south of Italy. You have this there's this wonderful habit called il caffè sospeso, that you can go in a bar and you not just pay for a coffee, and then whoever comes can have his coffee. So there is always an invitation open for you guys.
Sempre.
Esatto. Una invitation sospesa. So thank you very much. And hope there will be soon other occasion, and we will send you some the material that we are documenting all these things. So we'll send you the what we that we share, of course, and the things. And so thank you to Galit, thank you to Fabio and the two speakers of today, and we will close this session of today's session. Lucrezia says, thank you, Galit. And so for the people interested, we are continuing tomorrow at the same time, 10 o'clock. And the theme will be Neurosciences and Humanities. We'll host Raiti Smits from Rick Center and Arts Academy of Latvia. We will host Vittorio Gallese, whom we speak about briefly before, and Roberto Casati, philosopher and director of the HES Centre de la, no, directeur of Institut Jean Nicot in Paris. Okay, thank you to our speakers, thank you to our attendees, and see you tomorrow. Thank you. Goodbye. Loud applause here, Galit, going on.
I'll stay.
Yes, I okay. Yes, yes, please.
Can't hear you in the back. I'm in Canada.
Yeah.